Clerk will call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1. Andy H. Wynn, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation this morning will be delivered by Pastor Kevin Smith from the Faith Christian Fellowship Church in Fort Worth. Thank you for coming out today, sir. After the invocation, please remain standing for our pledges.
Let us bow. Heavenly Father, we just thank you once again for this opportunity to come before your presence. We thank you for this community. We thank you for this Commissioner's Court. We thank you for just this loving harmony, humility, and just the peace that you give us to be able to have this unity together. We ask that you bless each and every one here present. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Reverend. Mr. Manius?
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the Court, we have three announcements relating to the agenda this morning. The first two actually are under the Administrator's section. Item 8A1, these are the Annual Commissioner's Report on Road Conditions. We have included in your red folder the backup material as it relates to that particular item. Also, number 8, which is 8A8, out-of-state travel requests. We have added one additional travel request. I believe there's a total of 2. Then finally, members of the Court, under purchasing, item 8H1, this is bid 2014-060, which is the sale of recycled paper. As usual on items like this, we bid these after we post the agenda, so we have a revised court communication in your folder, which indicates the high price for the sale of that paper. Finally, members of the Court, just to reconfirm and to restate that on March 4th, we do not have a Commissioners' Court meeting. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of February the 11th.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Please record that Commissioner Brooks is not here at this time. Commissioner Wynn, I believe you have a proclamation for today, or a resolution.
Yes, Your Honor. We have the honor, I believe, to welcome Dr. Kitai Tung Nguyen, a scientist at the University of Texas at Arlington. Would you please read the resolution of commendation into the record?
You bet. Whereas while the University of Texas at Arlington Associate Professor Kitai Nguyen earned her Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering from the University of Minnesota and a Ph.D. in Chemical Bioengineering from Rice University, her postdoctorate work has been done at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center at Dallas and the University of Texas at Arlington. And whereas with an expertise that covers a broad area of cellular engineering, tissue engineering, and nanoparticles as controlled drug delivery systems, she is the principal investigator in research of nanoparticle drug delivery systems designed to spur lung growth and function after partial lung removal or destructive lung disease. And whereas this research is important because other than transplantation, there is not presently a cure for most destructive lung diseases, and the aim is for this to lead to a better quality of life for people who have had part of their lungs removed. And whereas Professor Nguyen has received numerous grant awards to support her research and has been published several times in peer-reviewed papers, books, and journals, and whereas she has also advises one research scholar, 3 PhD students, 4 master students, and 2 undergraduate students, and has worked with other researchers on several research projects funded through various funding agencies such as AHA, DOD, and NIH. And whereas the Tarrant County Commissioners Court wishes to encourage women to pursue academic and personal excellence, now therefore be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby commend Ki-Tai Nguyen for her extraordinary accomplishments in the field of bioengineering, in witness whereof we have hereunto set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 18th day of February, 2014.
And I move for its approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Judge and members of the court, the reason I invite Dr. Nguyen to be here with us, not only because of her personal achievement and her work in the area of bioengineering to help people suffering with lung issues, causing part of their lung to be removed. Her work has been tested on animal and has been proven to be effective on animal. Essentially, her work includes sending nanoparticles, very tiny microparticles, to the lung and inject medicine which help the lung grow back by itself, which I believe is a great miracle. But her success is a testament, is a testimony to why I keep saying America is the best country on earth. And I don't say that as a political statement. Rather, it's truly a fact. Dr. Nguyen escaped from Vietnam in 1987, not too long ago. And she spent 3 years in the refugee camps in Thailand and the Philippines until late 1989. And she arrived at the U.S. in 1990, as a refugee, suffering under the rule of communism. She attended 5 years at the University of Minnesota and obtained her Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering and later obtained her doctorate in bioengineering from Rice University. And she arrived at UTA in 2005 with her husband and her 11-year-old son. I strongly believe it's people like Dr. Nguyen who make America the best country, because it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what kind of obstacle you may face. With focus, with hard work, and with a great educational system, you can be a doctor in bioengineering and help bring a better future for people who suffer from one disease or another. So that is the reason why, Your Honor and members of the court, Dr. Nguyen is here with us. She mentioned to me that she's a little bit shy, so she doesn't want to make any speech. But still, I encourage you to do so, Doctor. Would you like? Please come forward. Like I always tell folks, if you can cross the Pacific Ocean, nothing else is hard. Please come forward.
Dr. Nguyen, thank you so much for coming down here today, and thank you so much for what you do. We would love to have some comments from you if you would like.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's good enough.
You know, when Asian folks say thank you, that means no.
Dr. Nguyen, we're not going to bore you and make you stay for the whole meeting. You can go ahead.
She did mention that she had some urgent business to handle.
Court members, you have before you our consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Manius?
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, we have 4 additional items for your consideration this morning. The first one, we're requesting that the court receive and file the annual commissioners' reports for all Tarrant County precincts for the reporting period of May 2012 through June 2013.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the court, one comment on that particular item. Next week you will see a request to submit our application to TxDOT as it relates to funding for roads that were damaged by the oil and gas industry. And this was part of one of that application. Members of the court, we can go to item number 2. We're requesting that the court approve a revised Appendix 1, which is the fee for services to the letter of engagement for KMPG for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2013 annual financial audit.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the court, if we could go to item number 3, we're requesting that the court accept a grant award from the Governor's Criminal Justice Division for equipment for the medical examiner's office.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Finally, members of the court, on item number 4, we're requesting that the Commissioners' Court concur with actions of the Hospital District Board of Managers and approve the Arlington Medical Home Project construction contract budget and contract award to G.L. Barron Company for property which is located at 1050 West Arkansas Lane in Arlington, Texas.
I move for approval with one comment. I have mentioned this before, but I want to make sure that the medical home is named as Southeast Tarrant County Medical Home. The reason is, although Arlington is the largest city in Southeast Tarrant County, and although it serves, it sits in Arlington, but the center does serve other cities, including Mansfield, the Tarrant County portion of Grand Prairie, Kennedale, and so forth. So I would like for it to be a little bit more inclusive, if that is at all possible.
Very good. And members of the court, Mr. Early is here, and I believe that he understands your directive.
I'll second with no comments.
We have a motion and a second with comments. Any other discussion? Thank you. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Glenn?
Good morning.
Good morning.
We have 2 items for the court this morning. The first item, we're asking the court to receive and file the personnel agenda.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And our second and final item, we're asking the court to approve out-of-class pay extension for public health. As explained in your court communique, public health has an individual who's received out-of-class pay since August of last year. Public Health has requested 1 extension and is now requesting a second extension. If the court grants that second extension, that will take us through the end of May. We are working with Public Health. They do have an eligibility list that they're working from, so they are actively trying to fill the vacant position. The impact to the Public Health Fund will be approximately $1,500, excluding fringe benefits.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Mr. Turner, how are you?
Doing great, sir. Morning, Judge, Commissioners. We have before you a memorandum of understanding that's actually been approved by our juvenile board during its meeting, in January. This is a reflection of a culmination of work that's been taking place over the past 2 or 3 years, a conversation and dialogue that's been going on between school districts, our department, many other stakeholders, to try to address the issue of truancy, and even before truancy, in impacting school attendance to keep young people in school. As you know, an original MOU was developed between this court and Arlington ISD to promote this type of activity, and certainly played a very important component in the proposal that we put together. The Texas Juvenile Justice Department requested proposals from local juvenile probation departments to develop prevention programs with local school districts. Back in October, we were awarded one of 4 grants from the state. We are the only urban county who received the award, so we were extremely pleased with that. We've already begun working with the Arlington ISD on this project, targeting children between the 1st and 8th grade to address, as I mentioned earlier, not just truancy, but really try to keep kids in school. As we mentioned in our proposal, that we want to try to minimize the number of young people who come into our system, in the juvenile justice system. But more importantly, we really want to have a positive impact on young people, on children, community, family, business, the economy of this county, which all, I think, is impacted through better work with kids and families and keeping them in school. The goal is to develop a model program that can be implemented in other urban school districts, and that is certainly our goal. We will receive, have already been awarded, and will receive just under $370,000 for the remainder of this year and all of next school year. Arlington ISD, we met with them just about 10 days ago. They've already hired employees, establishing contract with a lot of the local community providers to implement the program. We want to bring this information to you because of your collective engagement in this activity and the support that you have shown in the area of truancy. So we ask simply for your support and approval of the MOU that the board approved, as I mentioned, in our January meeting.
Okay. Mr. Turner, may I make a comment? Our goal is certainly to keep as many children and young men and women as possible away from our juvenile system.
Absolutely.
And that's basically the ultimate goal. But our approach is to build a preventive program,
Absolutely.
which hopefully will be able to be duplicated and expanded countywide.
Absolutely.
That is the goal. And it is essential, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we take a proactive and preventive approach to lift the burden of truancy management from our school teachers, and to allow the teachers to focus more on teaching, and the management of truancy will be handled by a group of social workers and experts.
Yes.
So essentially, that essentially is the approach. We are talking about forming some sort of a guiding committee.
Yes.
To make sure that we are on track to achieving such goals and objectives.
Yes.
And Commissioner Brooks, I know truancy is a priority on your agenda as well. And if there's any way that we can work together to make sure that what we do in Arlington will be fitting to your school districts in your precinct, we would welcome the opportunity to work with you.
Certainly.
Absolutely.
For that, I move for the approval of the memorandum of understanding.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brewer. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning, guys. How are you? I have 3 items to bring before you today, and let me just give you a little bit of background. HIV and AIDS Services in the Wichita Falls area has historically gone to the Wichita Falls County Health District out there, and as of December 31st, they are no longer providing HIV and AIDS services to our little over 100 HIV infected individuals on the Ryan White system. And so today I bring before you 3 contracts. There'll be some more next week so that we can provide continuity of care for those who are HIV infected. Today, the first contract that I'd like to bring before y'all is for Dr. Martin. Dr. Martin does medication management for those who are on mental health medications. And so we would like to ask the court to approve a contract with Dr. Martin.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
The second contract is with Dr. Sabine. He is a mental health provider, and we'd like to be able to continue mental health services out there for those who are HIV infected.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And the third contract for your approval today is for Park Plaza Pharmacy. It is for local drugs for those who are bridging between usually the state ADAP program and or insurance. And Park Plaza is one of 2 pharmacies out in the Wichita Falls area that will be providing services next week. You'll see another contract as well.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. So explain to me why it is that Wichita Falls or Wichita County just decides they're going to get out of this business?
I wish I had that answer for you. I've been doing this for 22 years, and they've been around the whole time I've been around. There are a few things that were brought to my attention. One is more rules, more regulations, less money, and that's the way it is for all of our places that we see. And we do a lot of monitoring and hands-on with all of our providers, and I think it was just a lot for a little, and there's a cap on admin charges. You cannot have more than 10% on some of our grants and even less on other grants. I think it was just a burden for them, and so they've declined the opportunity to continue to serve clients that are HIV positive.
So what's the impact? So the money that was going up there is now going to be coming to us.
The money was coming to us anyway, and then we were contracting out with the health district, and then they were subcontracting to some entities, like some of these physicians or pharmacies. Right now, we have identified a local medical provider out there, and he is willing to see clients pro bono right now, not interested in taking grant funds, doesn't really want to have the rules and regulations that go with a grant, so we're working to do some education to ensure that clients are served. We have, he has identified a lab that's willing to do some stuff pro bono. Again, we want to go out there and do some education. I have one of my staff out there today doing some education, and we're trying to find a wraparound service provider to provide services like case management, intake services, food pantry, case management, all those other wraparound services in addition to the medical services. We've been out there several times courting the community and trying to find a provider, and I've, as of last week, engaged DSHS, the Department of State Health Services again, and told them we really need their help. We are not having a lot of success finding a wraparound service provider in the Wichita Falls area. So right now we're looking at doing professional service contracts with the contractors, like these 3, who are still willing to serve clients until we can find an agency that's willing to be kind of the grantee for the area. So we're working diligently.
In the past, when we were contracting with the folks in Wichita County, is it one of those situations of where we were getting money and we were applying administrative fee, or were we sending that money directly to them and they were applying the administrative fee?
100% of the money was going directly to them. There's some set-aside money that the state gives us that says carve out of this, it goes to the Wichita Falls area, and 100% of that was going over to them.
And so now that money will be staying with us, and we will be able to charge an administrative fee for that.
Well, we're not planning on charging an administrative fee because we're still doing our same responsibilities. So we haven't charged anything. It's just taking a little bit of staff time right now to go out there and do some education and try to find a provider.
And I'm all for that, but I mean, you just stated you have somebody up there today.
Yes.
And so there is an administrative cost to this. And while I'm sensitive and we want to be serving those folks, not with Tarrant County dollars.
Okay.
I mean, they have a responsibility in Wichita County just as we have a responsibility in Tarrant County.
Yes, sir.
And if we're going to do that, I want us to be able to do it, but I don't want us to do it at the cost of our citizens versus somebody else deciding, well, golly, I'll just get out of it too. Tarrant County will pick it up.
Well, and we're hoping that all of the services dollars will stay in the Wichita Falls area. The state does give us a carve-out for administrative costs, $216,000 that they give us under the Ryan White monies, and that is for administering the funds locally and in Wichita Falls. So I don't really see us charging any additional dollars at this time, but we are definitely working very hard to identify a provider.
And it's not just Tarrant County and Wichita Falls. There is a multi-county.
The Wichita Falls area is encompassing of 11 counties. We have a 38-county area altogether.
And again, I applaud what you're doing, I applaud what we do, but other folks need to step up, as long as we're doing it within the administrative carve-out that we're allocated by the state, I think that's great. I just don't want to see us adding folks because somebody else has decided they don't want to mess with it anymore.
All of this is perhaps a consequence of the fact that AIDS Resources of Rural Texas went away year ago, year and a half ago.
Couple years.
And we have had to step up and take more control of AIDS services in the balance of that 38 county area. So this is just one more ramification of that.
And I hear that, and I understand and I applaud, again, our people for doing that and being able to step up. But one of the things that we've said as a court in our budget process is that if it's not a priority of the state, and if it's not a priority of the federal government, they're not going to simply flow that priority down to us and leave us or the citizens of Tarrant County with that burden. If it's not a priority to them, then we want to look at serving our citizens from that perspective.
I have actually, as of last week, like I said, I reached out to them and said, we need help. We're kind of drowning trying to find a provider. They're going to get their region people working with us again, and hopefully we'll find a provider soon, because it is quite difficult to be the administrator of the grant and then trying to also run these small contracts. So we're hoping for success soon.
Thank you very much for your diligence
Thank
in
you.
doing that. Thank you. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Mr. Beecham.
We have four items for your consideration this morning. Our first item is a bid award recommendation for bid 2014-060, the sale of recycled paper. Recommendation be toward the high bidder, Evergreen Sales, offering to purchase scale orders from the county for $20 apiece and paying $18 per ton for cardboard.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 2 is another bid award recommendation for RFP 2014-027. This is RFP for mosquito-controlled aerial spraying. Recommendation will be toward the Clark Environmental Mosquito Management Incorporated per the terms of the contract.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 3 is also a bid award recommendation for bid 2014-045. It's a bid for employee drug and alcohol testing for HR. Recommendation will be toward the primary and secondary vendors as shown in court communique per the terms of the contract.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And our last item is also a bid award recommendation for bid 2014-048, signing a contract for road flares. Recommendation will be toward a per unit price basis, selecting as our primary vendor Safety Glove Incorporated and our secondary Comade Incorporated.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Watch the basketball game Saturday?
Say again?
Watch the basketball game Saturday?
No. Was there a basketball game Saturday?
Yes.
Did y'all finally win something? How long has it taken you? How long has it taken you? Are there any appointments today? Court members, you have before you the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the claims, including the addendum. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Are you coming up here because you have something for us?
I do. I have a matter on number 9.
Oh, you have a
bonds.
bond.
I have a bond.
Okay, well, shoot.
Yes, sir. Members of the court, we would ask your approval on the bond of Stephen Vickers in the amount of $20,000 as the first assistant and chief deputy elections administrator, acting pursuant to Texas Government Code, Section 601.002.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and I'm assuming that he would take, it may be in effect now, but he would take effect March 14th.
It's in effect the moment that you approve it, and he's there now, and will just carry over and do the duties until the new person's in. So just smooths that over.
All right. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And I did want the court to be aware that we will be coming back at some point to talk about self-insurance options on bonds as opposed to official bonds the way that we're doing it, because there are some friendlier laws that will allow the county to consider whether to self-insure some of those bonds. So we're working on that behind the scenes, and we'll come back to talk to you about those in the weeks and months ahead. Thank you.
Briefing items, Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, we have 4 items for you this morning. The first item is the monthly update from the hospital district. Mr. Early is here to address the court at this time.
Hello, Robert.
Good morning. Commissioner, we are aware of the need to be more inclusive about the name of the medical home, and we'll do that. We've already talked to staff, and there's already been that change. It's just not hit all of our paperwork yet, because we don't want to make it provincial to just Arlington, because it serves so many of the people over there, and I don't want people to think that it's just an Arlington section. So we'll do that. I did hear that, and I understand that. One of the things that we try to do at JPS is you try to look at efficiencies, and you try to look at results, and you try to look at performance, all based on what the patient is witnessing. What does it mean to the patient? And when the new administration first came in, one of the biggest issues that we took on was the emergency department. In a public hospital the size of the one that we're fortunate enough to have in Tarrant County, you have a huge emergency department. So when you hear concerns, complaints, frustrations, good things, they're oftentimes centered around the emergency room. That is the focal point of the public hospitals throughout the nation. So what we tried to do was look at a better service model and a better care. And the first thing we did is we took the provider that we had in 2008 and we replaced them. When we replaced that provider, there was a large hue and cry from many saying this won't work, and we don't like this, and we don't like that. Anytime we make changes, those who are in existing situations are going to say that's the wrong decision, and we understand that. The proof is often in the pudding. And we had a report at the board meeting this month from Integrated Emergency Services. They're the ones that provide our emergency room care. And just a quick couple of points. In 2008, when we started this initiative, we were seeing 71,000 people a year in the emergency room at John Peter Smith. 71,000 people is a lot of folks. Today, we're seeing 114,000 people a year in the JPS emergency room. And what we've been able to do is take the left without being seen rates, which spiked at 21%. That would equate to about 15,000 people a year leaving JPS's emergency room and going to other emergency rooms. We now have that rate at 4.5%. So we've come down out of the 20 percentage points all the way down to 4, which is a huge benefit to our patients, but it's also a benefit to our colleagues in the industry, such as Baylor and THR and other facilities where those people would then go to their emergency rooms and create capacity issues for them.
How does that 4.5% compare to the national standard?
I believe, Commissioner, and I don't hold me to it, but I believe it's below the national standards.
That's what I would suspect.
It is, and I'm pretty sure that it is. I just don't have the national standard sitting in front of me, but I know it's been below. And we're proud of that. We're proud of the folks that we serve in the emergency room. The other thing that's been a challenge is when you're seen in the emergency room, amount of time. We can't predict emergencies, so it's really challenging if 3 of you all come in and we have 2 more that come upon that. And so you can't control emergencies. But at the beginning of 2008, on average, we had about a 6-hour wait in many of those situations. Now we're seeing patients within 30 minutes. And what we'll do is we triage that patient. We immediately see that patient by a doctor. This is door to provider. This is not door to anybody else. It's door to provider. And what we do in that case is we make an assessment on that individual as to where they should go. And a lot of what's been happening in the emergency room is we'll put that person in an urgent care setting, not the emergency room setting, because sometimes people have a hard choice in what they feel might be an emergency, but we'll put them in an emergency care setting. Some people come just to get a prescription renewed. We have to cycle them through as well. Everybody is seen at that front door, and we have to put them in the proper place. So that's why that time for provider to patient time has been significantly reduced, because we do a much better job in what we call a split flow process, which was initiated by Memorial down in Houston. And we went down and visited their program and saw that that system worked very well, and we incorporated here, thanks to Nick Zenarosa and the team of doctors that are working, who also works at Baylor and the Baylor system as well. The other time is been important. The third factor is we now are discharging over 10% of our patients after 7 p.m. There was a situation at JPS that is not very profitable in that we were discharging all at one time. And oftentimes we would discharge in the morning hours between 8 and 10, and we would discharge during that time period. You have to discharge when discharge needs to be discharged, because you've got to move those rooms all the time. So we unfortunately had people staying longer than they needed to stay, and we weren't running rooms through fast enough. Has been a challenge. So now we have more of an opportunity to discharge people, and we've made that an effort to discharge. The challenge that we still have at JPS, which all emergency rooms have, is a boarding problem. And that we'll see the patient, we'll work that patient up, they will see, but when it comes time for admittance, if we don't have a room available, they backlog in the emergency room. So trying to get them admitted into a room is the key factor. And we have to do a better job of that. If we have 25 or 35 people boarding in the emergency room that we can't move into rooms, that backs up your entire system. And everybody faces that problem, but it's like my mom said, I don't care what the other kids do, I only care about you. So I don't really care what the other hospitals are doing with their emergency rooms, it's just what we do with ours. So in that regard, I think we've made huge progress since 2008, and I'm proud of the team and I'm proud of the board. We had 2 board members that played a key role in this as well. Mr. Petty and Dr. Weber were part of the initial committee that we put together to try to make changes in the emergency room. And I'm very proud of the emergency room doctors, and our residency program has made a huge change. We're now training and teaching the emergency room docs for tomorrow in the North Texas region. I'm proud of them. Another update on the 1115 waiver, what we try to do as an anchor for our region is put on seminars and symposiums to tell people how best to deal with patients and issues that they're facing. We had our first learning collaborative where we brought the other entities in Region 10 together to talk about a few issues of concern. And 2 of those that we broke down was the navigation of the patient through any system that we have, whether it be through any system, any healthcare, what we're doing to look at patient navigation, how to get into a system, how to navigate through those systems. And so we put on a sort of a 2-day seminar on trying to figure out those issues of patient navigation. The other thing we talked about were behavioral health collaborations. And I'm very proud, I mentioned it before, about what we have here in Tarrant County with our MHMR team and the folks that deal with it. But we're dealing a lot more now with some of the area outlining issues to deal with mental health. I'm very proud of our team, but really proud of MHMR and what this county has. And we should all be proud of that. Other thing that we've changed is our outpatient pharmacy. If y'all get a chance, I'd like to have you come by and look at our new outpatient pharmacy. We moved it. It was a very, very small area on the first floor. In fact, when you needed a new desk, it was usually a cardboard box. And so we switched that over, made a few refurbishings, thanks to y'all and what you voted on before and helping us out. But it is now in what used to be the drop-off for the old emergency room, that bay that was there. We expanded that and created a new outpatient pharmacy. What's important about that pharmacy is twofold. One, for the employees there. If you're standing all day, That can be troublesome and problematic, particularly on your back and other things. We have cushioned floors for those folks. If you think that's a luxury, try standing all day on a cushioned floor as well. It's still not comfortable, but it's better. We have a new conveyor belt system that runs the prescription spine. It goes through a system where you have more efficiency. We also have a separate entrance for employees, so the employees can go to their entrance in the pharmacy. Our patients can go to their entrance in the pharmacy, which reduces lines, which is a big benefit. And we're putting in a kiosk that employees can swipe their card and put their prescription in for pickup the next morning, which will be helpful to our employees. I'm pleased with that. Last thing I wanted to update you on before I leave or entertain any questions is our search for a new CFO. As you know, that David Salisbury decided to go to a consulting role and make a few changes in his life. We have started that search. We started that search months ago. We've had 5 candidates in. We have our 5th candidate coming in this week. I will tell you the challenge with a CFO, there are a lot of talented people, but to have the intricacies of knowing public hospital type funding measures is important. So we'd like to have somebody that has a little bit of background in not only the 1115 waiver, but 340B pharmacy funding and what we have to do with dish payments and some of the issues that we face at the state. So we're a little particular and a little choosy. And I don't want to get expedient and make a choice that is a poor choice for you in this county. CFO is an incredibly important position, and we want to get the right person. So I just want to give you an update on that and let you know where that is. Judge, Commissioners, that's all I have for y'all today.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks. Keep up the good work.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good to always see you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the Court, we can go to item B. This is an update on the East Lancaster redevelopment project. Ms. McMillan is here to address the court at this time.
East Lamar.
East Lamar.
What did I say?
Lancaster.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Brooks was wondering what was happening in his precinct.
I was hoping.
At least I said I was sorry.
I just thought they were fixing to make it back to 6 lanes.
Well, you got the east right.
Why don't you go ahead and start?
Okay.
Starts with an L and an A.
That's right.
For the past several months, staff has been in discussions with the developer and the City of Arlington about a proposed public-private partnership to redevelop approximately 66 acres along the north side of East Lamar Boulevard. The project includes the demolition and redevelopment of 4 existing apartment complexes, along with improvements to various roadways in the area and improvements to the nearby Rockmore Elementary School. The City of Arlington right now plans to provide upfront assistance toward the cost of demolition and remediation, park improvements, and other items. And the developer is seeking additional assistance from the city and county over a period of time that would be tied to the incremental value that's added from the new development in the area. Robert Kimball, the developer who is working on the Viridian project right now in the north part of Arlington, and Bruce Payne, the Economic Development Director with the City of Arlington, are here today to provide the court with information that provides an overview of the development plans for the area and the proposed public financing request for this East Lamar redevelopment project. So I'm going to turn it over to Bob and Bruce right now.
Judge, Commissioners, thank you very much for your time. I'll just open this up very quickly, and then I'll let Bob Kimball speak to you more specifically about the project. The City Council has been focused on this area of Arlington for some time. It experienced a wave of apartment development. We had a great concentration of apartments that occurred in the 70s and the 80s for people more or less our age who were coming out of their parents' houses and wanted to live in rental space until they got married and moved on to the neighborhoods that ultimately were settled in Arlington. Unfortunately, a lot of these developments were developed cheaply, and they have not aged well. And they've gone downhill. They've experienced rapid turnover with ownership, and they tend to use them up, maybe put paint on it, and then they sell them again. And they become chronic code enforcement issues, chronic centers of crime, and also, in some cases, concentrations of poverty. This is an issue that the City Council's been aware of for some time and has taken multiple steps over the years to try to address this. Back in 2005, they did what could be described as a fairly aggressive rezoning effort, greatly increasing the potential density that could be achieved for a developer who might want to come in and acquire the apartment complexes and do them in a way that would meet the new design standards for that. But nothing happened. Even through the wild heyday prior to the downturn of financing that was going on, there was no serious expressed interest by any development entity to come into the city, acquire these properties, do the necessary work, either demolition and redevelopment, that the City Council was interested in seeing. And so the downturn happened, and again, nothing was happening, and there was a lot of expression from the City Council to, what can we do to stimulate this sort of thing? And I began looking at it maybe not so much as a redevelopment effort, but more as an economic development deal. And maybe we could put something together that worked that way, where a developer would have a clear and potential incentive that they could strive for that would be market-based, and that their return would be commensurate with the amount of investment and the results of the project that they would come up with. And so we asked Bob Kimball, who had been working with the city since 2006 on the Viridian project, who probably is the guru on residential demand within the city, to take a look at the Lamar Collins area and bring us back a project. Tell us something that makes some sense from a developer standpoint that maybe we can take to City Council, which he did. He took about a year to do this. And he came back and he actually identified an area that surprised me. I was thinking he would go completely opposite end of the Lamar Collins area from where he finally landed. And for a number of reasons, he identified these 4 sites, which are surrounded by Rockmore Elementary School and a large city park, Parkway Central City Park. There is a private golf course, Rolling Hills, right next to it, and it sits right on I-30. Very convenient location for what his market was to be, which were for up-and-coming professionals and or empty nesters who may want to have quick access to I-30 and to be able to go to either various points in the Metroplex or out of beyond the Metroplex as needed in an easy fashion. And so that's what he brought forward. And what I told Bob is, in treating this like an economic development deal, we would create an incentive arrangement that would allow you to recruit the investment and would hopefully answer to the risks that you'd be taking on of the difficulty in assembling multiple properties such as this over time, and then going through the process of redevelopment. Bob originally spoke to us about creating a TERS, and you all are no strangers to doing that. In fact, we have 4 in Arlington, and I know multiple others throughout Tarrant County that you've participated in the interest of stimulating new development. Well, I told Bob, I said, creating a TERS for this size of a redevelopment project is akin to using an elephant gun when a .22 rifle will be just fine. And so we're choosing a different mechanism rather than doing a TERS. In the city side, it's a Chapter 380 agreement, and he's going to speak to you about a Chapter 381 agreement, which I know is not something you normally do. However, the structure is designed to replicate a TERS, where the increased value that comes in fosters the development that he's trying to do. The city has already committed to this. We've now executed a master agreement and 3 sub-agreements with Mr. Kimball on this project. We have committed to putting approximately $10.4 million into helping him with demolition costs as well as infrastructure costs. That has to do with East Lamar, and as well as going in and upgrading Parkway Central. And then, of course, as Mr. Kimball will speak to you about, he's been in regular conversation with the Arlington Independent School District Board about their potential for either redeveloping or significantly renovating and repurposing Rockmore Elementary School. So I've set the stage for you. I wanted you to hear that, and then I'm going to let Bob speak to you for his vision and how he intends to execute this project.
Morning. Thanks for coming.
Morning, Judge, Commissioner.
Morning, Bob.
How do I control the slides on this? Down arrow?
There you
That'll
go.
work. We started working on this really 4 or 5 years ago, trying to identify, how do you do redevelopment in an area? How do you do it with respect for the population that's there? How do you? There's actually 21 complexes in what is the Lamar Collins overlay. The appropriate thing, from my perspective, is you can't nor should you demo all of them. We need a mix of housing opportunities. So we said, well, where could we begin the process of a more density to replace some old projects? How do we do it in a way that respects the stakeholders that are there, which includes existing families and the stakeholders that have adjacencies? And can it work from an economic perspective? As a developer, really what I do is facilitate all the stakeholders to a desired result that as best we can meets everyone's interests. Viridian is an example of where we took a very difficult site that had failed consistently for 30 years, and although it's been a big challenge, the project is performing really well above, from a value perspective, what we thought was possible, which is good news for this area. So we looked at the project and we said, well, here's an area that's isolated. The edges are unique for a redevelopment effort. You have a park. You have Texas Health Resources corporate headquarters across the street. You got the new Center Street Bridge. The investment that went into the Three Bridges project included significant pedestrian access across those bridges in anticipation of redevelopment that would encourage pedestrian activity. So our development plan begins to address that. So these projects are in the 10 to 12 million range on the tax roll when we're done. It will be in the $180 to $250 million range, just depending on what happens with values. What makes these kinds of projects impossible, and why there's not a line of developers in Arlington trying to do this kind of thing, is it's just really difficult and it takes a long time. And the economics aren't all that great because the properties are worth more as cash flowing, deteriorating properties than they are as raw land. So that was our challenge. These are just some statistics about the size of the property and the current valuation. In addition to the valuation issues and the lack of cash flow that's thrown off for city services, is you've got because of the deterioration, the size of the units, you've got multiple families, in some instances multiple generations living in the apartments. And so our company's unique, and we took a look at this and said, similar to what we did in Viridian, is that you need a mixed approach. This is just a small site relative to the overall problem. And the overall problem has to be, you have to heal the place from the inside out as well as the outside in. This is the outside in approach. This is a more typical approach that you would see from a development. We also have to do the inside out part, which is working with the faith-based organizations to work with the families, partnering with the school district, trying to find out about, remember there's 21 complexes here, not 5, and how do we begin to address the population that lives here in addition to the redevelopment. And so we have a plan to do both.
Bob, when you say 21, are you talking about further to the east or the other ones?
To the north. This is the southernmost boundary of what would be the Lamar Collins overlay.
Okay.
And so it goes from I-30 all the way up to Viridian, really, at Green Oaks Boulevard. Okay. And these are probably the worst. And so it's a very unique opportunity. It's very unusual that the fact that these are so bad actually helps make it feasible, because the acquisition price would be such that it gets us closer. If we had to pay, if they had been recently remodeled, one of these is a Fannie Mae foreclosure. It took us a year to get Fannie Mae to even talk to us about it. And we finally got it under contract, and three of the 4 properties have now been closed on, so we control at least 3 of the 4, the 3 key ones that we needed to have. So it's, but this is the southernmost edge. This is the injection, if you would, into into the arm of trying to begin the redevelopment effort. The benefit of doing it here is forget the population issues and the impacts from that, looking solely from an economic perspective. You have a neighborhood to the north that has significant multifamily housing or single-family housing, beautiful neighborhoods that should be seeing AV growth, and it's not. It's continuing to deteriorate. And it's because of the deterioration and lack of maintenance on these units as well as others. And you have a concentration of issues from, the police are out here constantly calling on things here for issues related to just the lack of background checks and things that are done in these apartments. Because of the low quality, they have to work a little harder to get tenants. A lot of the apartments here have high vacancy rates. There are some owners that do a great job, and their vacancy rates are lower. Their rents are similar, which kind of confuses me why people don't move into those. When we did our research, we found that to be true, and which makes our job a little easier in terms of finding homes. So this is the southernmost. The school district is supporting this project, which is unusual. The Arlington Independent School District categorically does not support multifamily redevelopment. The reason they're doing that, and you'll see in their bond proposal that will be out in May, is that they want to rethink how they work with concentrations of poverty populations and the challenges that come with single moms and grandmas raising their kids and the support they need. And if they can build a new elementary school and then repurpose this one into an arts magnet and redraw some boundary lines, they can begin to kind of balance the population to where the workload on the teachers can be a little more balanced. And they'll do a much more eloquent job explaining that than I would. That's not my business. But the turnover that they have in teacher populations and things in the school, this has been a high priority for them to figure this out. So it's a joint stakeholder project. And, I've gotten a real education working on the weekends in this area through some of the faith-based organizations to understand a little bit more about the challenges. And so we have a much better understanding over the last year and a half, doing that every week, of what we're dealing with. It certainly will change your politics and your thought process as you get to know and see just the challenges these folks have from lack of transportation, constantly fighting the battles with the different agencies that they have to work with for assistance, and how long that takes. And so we have this rent roll, Judge, and we have all these different types of people that live here, from assistance, different levels of assistance, different backgrounds, and the challenges of relocating them to the appropriate place that would accept them. So that's another part of this redevelopment effort is, how do we get through relocation and demolition and ultimately the rebuilding. There's lots to talk about on that. We don't have time today, maybe on one-on-one sessions or however much time you'd like to spend. We can do that. On the economics of the vertical, we're essentially doubling the density. That cuts the purchase price of the land in half. The city's helping with the demolition cost and some additional grants to offset just pure acquisition costs to begin to get us a little closer. But we didn't want to create the same problem 30 years from now. This quality level has never been built in Arlington. It's never been attempted. It's another reason it hasn't happened is equity people and banks don't like to do anything the first time. They don't like the arrows in their back. And the rents that we're projecting to achieve here have never been achieved in Arlington. Similar to Viridian, where everyone said you're going to do $150,000 average price per house at best. We're averaging $350,000, and by the time the development's done, it'll be over $450,000. So Viridian will be $1.5 billion to $2 billion development when market studies said that wasn't possible. We think we can do a similar thing here, but we can push the rents to maybe $1.40. But we're building a quality level with structured parking and architecture and double landscaping costs and sound attenuation that would push the rents into the $1.80 range to make it viable. And so what we're looking for is some 381 assistance to mirror what a TERS would be in terms of tax assistance, incremental tax rebate, if you would, through a 381 agreement. That would go into our cash flow streams to cover kind of the gap between the structured park quality level that we're building, which we hope eventually will change the market studies for Arlington, set a new high bar for rents in the area, so that then future projects that might come behind wouldn't need the same level of assistance. So that's the general overview of the strategy. We have this beautiful parkway in the middle that could be a Boston Commons kind of landscaping program, and the city's committing, $5 million plus for improvements to that linear park as well as the park in the back. The school district, of course, through the bond election, is significant reinvestment of Rockmore up to $7 million. And then we're also doing some things with the country club to add for sale housing for them and give them a new entrance for the club. We've already had calls from other developers who are interested in some of the retail that's across the street. So just the mere announcement that we're doing this has spurred interest in the area for obvious reasons. It's a great location, and the visibility off of 30 is outstanding, and the redevelopment of the entertainment district makes it a very interesting site, which allows us to attract capital.
Very good. Next step?
That might be for me. As we've mentioned, this is some of the statistics on this, that this is being structured as close to a TERS as we can create, where the exception is that when a TERS is created, you have the incremental value that's intended to pay for future infrastructure related to the project. And we've kind of turned that around a little bit. And the city has decided that we will step up and pay for the necessary off-site infrastructure, that is the improvements to Lamar Boulevard, the improvements to Parkway Central, as well as Bob mentioned, helping him with some of the demolition and other related costs. But we will take the increment and create a value proposition which is based on the quality of what he proposes, and this is just some of the imagery that he's provided, that would entice an investor to come in and participate in this, because that's really what's always been lacking. Nobody's been willing to risk the resources necessary to acquire one complex at a time, over time, and it's in this holding mode, and during that period of acquisition, you don't know what's going to happen. And then once that happens, then they have to go ahead and then begin to vacate the premises, ultimately demolish the facilities, and go through a lengthy period of absolutely no income stream whatsoever. And then go through construction and then ultimately ramp up the leasing and put people back in it before you actually start making money on this. So how do you get somebody to be willing to do something like that? And this is not just an Arlington issue. This is every city that is approximately the same age as Arlington, went through similar circumstances. We're now a redevelopment city. Greenfield sites are virtually non-existent, the ones that are easy to build on. And so redevelopment is going to be very much part of our future. And so the strategy here is to how do we create a mechanism that more or less puts the developed site back on a greenfield status, that the developer can then come in and add and create something of higher value, repurposed, and to build something of quality that would more or less stand the test of time. It would be if people continue to want to be there, the values will always be maintained. But every city will deal with this at some point or another in their future, and it's a very difficult problem, especially when everything to date has been oriented toward the ease and facilitation of building up on greenfield sites, so you don't have to tear anything down. It's really just a matter of getting one loan and going in, putting in infrastructure, building your stuff, and selling it. And that's how so much of that stuff got built so cheaply to begin with.
Are you decreasing the size and the flow of Lamar?
There hasn't been a design that's been done for Lamar yet. It's not anticipated that we would do a lane reduction. However, one of the things that's been discussed is taking the inner lane, I would call the lane that's adjacent to the property, and having that for evening parking or things such as that, dual purposing the lane, but keeping the capacity of the road at what it is.
Doesn't Lamar carry an awful lot of traffic away from the stadium?
Not in this location.
No.
Can I address this?
Yes.
We're doing the traffic studies. We've authorized that now that we've completed partial of the acquisition, and we're going to study all that and to make sure
Are you creating a larger access road behind or to the south of your property?
If you look at this site, it has. Let's go back to the map. You've already got circulation along the access road. We're not impacting that at all. This particular section of Lamar doesn't get that much traffic.
But as I look at that, where you've got that red circle is where the access road is dumping into Lamar as opposed to following on through. Are you proposing to follow it on through and not force it to Lamar and then having to turn left?
That reason that was circled, and that was an issue for discussion with the council, is that intersection will probably have to be adjusted.
When we finish the traffic study and we make the final decisions about, and we're really only talking about the westbound portion of Lamar changing, but before we could make any changes, we've really got to look at that intersection. So it's on the list. Obviously, we've circled it. We know it's a problem, and it'll have to be addressed ultimately with what we do.
I have a question. This is a beautiful development, and I can see why one would want to do it. My concern is that when you gentrify an area like this, that you price out the indigenous population, the folk who were there before the gentrification. They've got to be relocated somewhere. Some additional affordable housing options have to be created somewhere. What is the plan for handling those populations?
And I know this area well because I've been in it every weekend for a year and a half, and there are the vacancy rate is in the 30% range. So there are a lot within walking distance of this site. Actually, and this is the part that's interesting to me. We could go out there together and you can walk it and see it for yourself. At the same rent levels, there are better quality, higher amenitized housing options just down the street than what these projects presented. And for the life of me, I don't understand why folks don't gravitate to those opportunities. So because of our the families that live here represent a significant cash flow stream to other apartment owners in the area, and they're very anxious to get an opportunity to market to these families. So our goal is to make sure, particularly for the elderly and the single moms, that the transition from this location just down the street, literally, goes smoothly. We're negotiating on their behalf as part of our what we call our CARES program. It's an acronym, but to get application fees waived, to transfer security deposits, to provide boxes, to provide box trucks, to pick families up once they've boxed their things up and move them and boot the boxes in their rooms, so that we can make it as easy as possible. The reality is that if we can get the occupancy rates up a little bit, and just the group we're moving isn't going to move the needle on the huge vacancies that are in the area, but it will help. And as a property gets vacancies up into the 85 to 90% range, it really makes it easier for that landlord to maintain their landscaping and to do improvements and to replace appliances. It relieves some of the stress. So if we, like I said before, you don't want to wholesale remove 21 apartment complexes. But if you have a better balance that raises the bar in terms of occupancy for everyone in the area, then you actually can improve, I believe you can improve the economics for all involved, for everyone involved. A little balance is good. And we I think, can speak with that with more credibility because we invest our time and our talent and our treasure in this area regardless of this project, because it's just a and the way we develop Veridian, we proved the same thing. And most developers, like on Veridian, would put a spine road in and they'd put pods, and each income level would have their own pod. We didn't do that. Developers do that because they get their cash flow a year earlier because they sell the pod, not lots. so they don't have to develop that pod. Well, we don't do that. We mixed all the housing types up. So I've got police officers living on the same park in a $250,000 to $275 house with a $500,000 house, catty corner on the corner on a 65-foot lot. So I got a 35-foot lot and a 65-foot lot across from the same park living together. Most people say you can't do that. So, if it's hard to do it in this environment, but if you want to come out and we talk philosophy about what you're describing, because it's a huge problem. How do you have redevelopment and deal with the gentrification issue? And you want both, and so this is how we do it.
Understand me. I spent 20 years building and managing low-income multifamily housing. And I know that the key to success of those particular projects is management, intensive management. The reason that some of these families don't gravitate to some of these better-looking, better-managed projects is because they can't get in. Now, they're going to have someone to advocate for them to make sure that this relocation plan that looks good on paper actually works in the real world.
Well, the Arlington City Council as well is concerned about the same thing. And what we are doing, we've committed to do, is we have the master rent rolls. And to the extent that we can, we'll keep track of on an individual basis where everybody went and how they got there. Now, if someone decides to leave and on their own, and they don't need to tell us where they're going.
No.
But to the extent that someone needs assistance in the form of an advocate,
then it ought to be
Right.
available somewhere.
Right. And I advocate every week. The people that I'm advocating for in our ministry, we advocate every week. We know how to do that. We have vets that need help with tickets, and we have folks that have paid a money order for their rent. Somebody at the apartment embezzled the money order, and the landlord's saying you got to pay it again. I mean, those are problems we deal with and have learned to deal with every week. And that's a ministry piece that's separate, but I don't know another developer that understands that would invest their time in that. And to me, that's the test of time for our company. And we're not going anywhere. I'm moving my family to Arlington. Is how we deliver over time. Up here, it's just talk. On the plan, it's just a plan. So the real test for us will be how we perform over time. We're happy to come back and report to you with the same rent roll that we're going to report to the city, and to the extent that we can, we'll tell you where everybody went and how they got there. And there will be people are vocal. If they're not ashamed to speak up, and the TV crews and newspaper reporters love that, and so if we don't do this right, believe me, you're going to hear about it, and it'll be very public.
Well, I hope to hear about it before it goes wrong.
Well, I haven't had anything go wrong on our projects. We've been real intentional about how we deal with people. It's an important part of our ethic of our company, and you can expect that will continue.
That's what I want to hear.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Bruce.
Members of the court, one of the reasons we brought this is because the county normally does not participate in the 381 agreement.
Well, we still got to hear a lot about what the 381,
Right.
because I didn't hear an ask.
Well, and this is one of the reasons we wanted you first to learn about the project. So there's several things we'll need to be doing in the coming months, is to have more discussions with the Commissioners Court about the project and its support, if they choose to, of the project itself. And then second, the use of the 381 as a tool for that support. And I think we've been talking about looking at what other tools we can use in our economic development toolbox, and this is something that we need to look at, because once we start, we have to have a policy and guidelines that guide us for not only this project, but for any other projects in the future. So these are some of the things we'll need to be looking at in the coming months, and there'll be discussion amongst the court about that. But we wanted you to see the project, and this may be the test case for that use of that.
That's exactly the point. I've been interested in using 381s for a while. A test case that's perhaps in Arlington would perhaps benefit.
We'll be the guinea pig. We'll be the guinea pig.
Thank you.
You may have to be.
Thank
We're
you,
going to
Bob.
recess for we'll just hold for about 5 minutes. Phillips.
Good morning. I'd like to update the Commissioners Court on the progress of several facilities management construction projects. First, the 1895 Courthouse Clock Tower Rehabilitation Project. One of the primary goals of the project was to provide a watertight clock tower, and we met that objective with the exception of we found last year some small pinhole leaks around the edges of some of the clock face glass panels that you see, the white panels. Now, Tracy Pelly and her staff have been working with the general contractor, the glazing subcontractor, the glass manufacturer, and the architect to work through this construction warranty issue. It seems that the sealant we used around the edges of the glass panels is not compatible with the plastic lining in between the panes of glass of this laminated safety glass we use for the faces of the clocks. It seems that the glass is delaminated a couple of inches so on the edges, which may be causing some movement in the glass and may be causing some leaks. The glass manufacturer in Pennsylvania has stated that the petroleum products in the sealant we used has delaminated the glass. And the general contractor, the glass installer, and the architect were not made aware of any issues with the sealant that was specified during the installation of this project. Now, we've been going back and forth.
So everybody's doing this?
Yes, Commissioner. That's my life. We're going back and forth with all the parties over the last several months, and the final outcome is the glass installer is going to remove all the old sealant and reseal all 40 of the glass panes over the next few months using a silicon-based sealant that has been approved by the glass manufacturer in writing. All this work will be done under warranty. Moving on to the 1895 Courthouse Site Improvement Project. I believe we are now past the toughest and the riskiest parts of this multi-year project, and I think the fun will begin when we witness the rebuilding of the 1895 Courthouse West Entry and the restoration of the West Grounds. The first order of business is to relocate all the entries to the building to the east side of the courthouse. We're doing this relocation because the contractor will need to take in the south steps and the current ADA staff entry as part of the construction zone. We'll be replacing the ceramic tile at the base of the south steps with granite, and we will be replacing the brick on the sidewalk with new brick. Now, the current ADA and staff entry will no longer be used. It will not be reopened. We will use the east entry until the permanent west entry is opened about a year from now. We will give notice to the impacted departments tomorrow, and this change will be taking place this coming weekend.
Why do we need to take the whole south entry out for the whole construction period?
Because they are taking that whole south ceramic base. They're going to have to drill piers, and we're going to have to bring a new foundation in to set that granite on. It's going to be a major construction zone. We're also repointing a lot of the granite block around the sides. and there's a lot of work going on in that area, Judge.
But I mean, are we going to do that work throughout, is it going to take throughout the entire period, or, I mean, we're replacing a bunch of stuff on the west end, I understand that.
Yes, sir.
But I don't understand why the south side has to be closed for the entire period of time.
Well, the south side, we do not plan to open back up the south entry at all because we plan to keep using the east side because we have built a nice entry over there. We've moved our card access.
Wait a minute. You're telling me you don't ever plan on opening the south entry again?
The south ADA entry, not the steps.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't make myself clear. The south ADA entry. We do plan to open up and go up the steps again. But we have a lot of work on the steps, a lot of work above on the balusters around, the columns need repointing. There's some mortar joints in pretty bad shape. There's a lot of work in that area.
Okay.
Now, last week.
So where is the ADA? The ADA entry is going to be to the west or to the south? I mean, to the east?
East.
The temporary ADA and staff entry will be on the east side. There's two doors that you can see from your office, and we've already moved the pedestal and the card entry and the ADA. We've already made those doors ADA friendly, built a ramp, stairs, and those kind of things are there now. My carpenter shop has done that.
Ultimately, where is the ADA entry going to be?
The permanent entry will be on the west side, which I'm going to show you some of the ADA parking on the west side now. The judge had questions regarding the accessible parking on Houston Street, and on this drawing, it's a sketch, kind of gives you an indication of the space that we're providing for the new ADA parking. These spaces are, at least the van parking in the front page, is about 21 feet wide from the drive lane to the curb, and that's about a foot or two wider than a standard two-car garage. So there should be ample room for a person in a van who needs to pull up. It can pull up next to the curb. And one of these particular drawings, it shows the van pulling up next to the curb. They'll be able to pull down the lift and come out with a wheelchair and still be 10 feet away from the drive lane. So we do think this will be adequate for those folks who need those special accommodations and some extra space to get out of their vehicles. Now, the two spaces up toward the north are just regular standard ADA spaces with a 5-foot walkway.
So are these unloading areas, or are these permanent parking? Are these where they can park there for?
Judge, these will be marked as accessible areas only. Then I don't know. I suppose the city will charge for these areas. I don't know. I haven't got that far yet with it, but these are not loading zones and unloading zones. These are actually parking spaces.
So in all likelihood, they're going to be full from 8 to 5, and the people who are coming in to do temporary business are not going to have any place to unload.
Well, I believe the regulations allow for 2-hour parking downtown Fort Worth around this area. Now that has to be monitored. So you get a 2-hour. If you've got a blue placard, you get 2 hours. It used to be all day, but I believe it's 2 hours today.
I would like for there to be, my preference would be an unloading or something along that type of a lines, because I think as these handicapped spots, I think we have some of those that are parking around our building here, and for the most part, they're occupied all day long.
Yes, those are folks with the blue placards and who park, and I think they may get free parking for 2 hours, but they're supposed to move.
And these people are probably going to have blue placards also.
Yes, sir, they will.
And they're probably going to be there all day, which means that the people who are trying to come in and out aren't going to have a place to unload again.
Okay. Let me look into that for the loading zone option.
The flip side of that coin is that some of the drivers of these vans will be in wheelchairs themselves. So they can't drop themselves off, go park the car, and come back
Well,
and
and
do their
I don't disagree with that, but it ought to be something that basically says you're not going to be there for an
50
all-day
minutes.
period of time. And, again, my preference would be for a pull-in, but I understand what you're saying, I guess, from this perspective. The way you've got this one, this first page,
Yes, sir.
are you anticipating that they're going to actually park?
Well,
I don't know how you get into that one spot like this one.
The diagonal lines across, what are, is that
those are,
supposed,
that's tape. Oh, that's paint.
that's just paint?
It's paint. That's just to give them a landing spot. Now, if they can park in the open area where it has the identification for an accessible space, or they can park closer to the curb, it's a big space, and as we've gone through this process over the years, we've got a lot of people, and especially the probate courts, have had issues with ADA parking in downtown Fort Worth. There's just not any around the courthouse. That's one reason we provided this parking, and we're encroaching in on county property to help with some additional room. Moving on.
But not resolved.
I'll be back with some more information. Moving on to the Civil Courts Building project. The weather in December, January, and February played havoc with the progress of the exterior and interior work. It's difficult to get a good work product when it's 25 degrees Fahrenheit outside and the wind's blowing 25 miles an hour. Yates has been very careful about placing any brick, granite, and windows during this bad weather. Yates has been trying their best to control the temperature of the inside of the building and humidity so they can start placing some woodwork on the inside of the building. It's been somewhat difficult because the exterior work impacts the tightness of the building envelope, and that certainly has impacted the interior work. We originally planned to place the angels on the building in last December. That work is being rearranged. Those angels won't fly in until March or April. Last week, Yates provided...
They'll fly on the back as soon as they fly on the front?
Yes, right there afterwards. Last week, Yates provided me with an updated project schedule that resequences a considerable amount of the work, and it also has a completion date still in December of this year, and I'm not sure they're going to make it. They say they can make it, and they're trying hard. They're working Saturdays. It's just a lot of work between here and now. Since December, mid-December, early December, it's been difficult for them to get work done. Next week, I'll present a change order to the Commissioners Court for approximately $200,000 that will include several items to be addressed, such as adding 171 electrical outlets in various areas of the building to help solve some problems with the departments. We are adding these outlets now because back in 2011, when we were bidding this project, I found out, staff let me know that it was going to take 60 or more days to complete the final department reviews for the outlet locations and update the electrical drawings and other drawings that have to be updated. That was going to delay the overall bid of the project. I instructed the staff and the project team to go ahead and bid the project and deal with these outlets later because I was concerned about escalating construction costs. And we also put in, at that time back then, on the initial guaranteed maximum price, we added $50,000 into Yates's guaranteed maximum price to address these known upcoming electrical outlet adds, and $50,000 won't be enough. The change orders will also include adding some drywall to the end of the curved elevator lobby ceilings to hide the mechanical equipment, and also will include widening 36 elevator door frames so the door frames will marry up properly with the elevator lobby marble panel walls. Next week, you'll see a budget reallocation for approximately $200,000 to pay for additional wood trim for 78 courtroom doors. In the original construction documents, the 78 doors did not have any wood trim on them, and those doors need to have wood trim to make it look right and hide the metal frames. In addition, in March or April, you'll see a change order for the upgrades for the Lawyers Lounge, which will be paid for by the Tarrant County Bar Foundation. And I will ask the Commissioners Court to approve a change order for approximately $250,000 or less to raise the brick screen walls on the roof to properly cover and or screen the HVAC equipment on the roof from view. The screen that we have up there now is not tall enough.
With all of this, are we still going to be within budget?
We have the change orders. My goal, Commissioner, is to not to exceed change orders over 2 or 2.5% of the original value of the guaranteed maximum price, and that will be about $1.2 million and $1.5 million in that area. These two change orders I've got coming, one next week and one probably, which portion of that Bar Foundation is paying for. It'd probably be about 500 or 600, so we'll be about 1%. Now, we're already in 21 months into the project or so. We're moving forward 9 or 10 months away, and I'm feeling pretty confident. We do have a couple of other things coming up, and that we'll need to address, some cameras and such, but I still think I'll be able to keep it within the 2%. Lastly, the Space Master Plan for the criminal court system in downtown Fort Worth. The second round of meetings with the courts and the other 12 departments has been completed, and we should have something to give to you preliminarily in April as far as maybe how these buildings would stack out and block up as far as how many courts we can get per floor and wherever money might go. Then we'll get direction from the court, and then the architects will finalize the documents and make a final presentation to you May or June.
I had a judge who will remain nameless say that they weren't sure exactly why we were reconstructing courtrooms when there was plenty of them over there. There might be some that I know that they're varying sizes, but some of the ones who currently have very small courts might be able to move to larger courtrooms. To what extent does your group include judges that are actually working with the committee like we've done at the family law and the civil courts, where they include the Bar Association, the DA, all of that? Are those folks working with you in your space plan?
Yes, sir. We have 13 different groups. One of those groups is the criminal courts, and there's a subcommittee, and it's headed up by Mr. Shugart. He has, in the last meeting, I think they had more than 4, but they have assigned 2 district judges, criminal judges, to the subcommittee, and 2 county judges to that subcommittee. I think more than that showed up last time to voice their opinion regarding what's required and what's not. We also include, of course, the district clerk, district attorney, county clerk, CSCD.
So are we
everybody.
redoing all of the courtrooms?
Well, right now, it's looking at, from the information I'm getting back from the judges over the last few years and lately, they're looking for more room regarding inmate holding, client and attorney conferencing. They're looking for possibly larger jury rooms and jury boxes and things of that nature to solve some of the space issues they've got now in the larger courtrooms in there too. So over the years, I've heard the same theme, Judge, is that these courtrooms work well now, but for the future technology and things of that nature, they probably won't. They still have issues with court holding for the inmates. They need individual rooms instead of where they line them up as a group, and it's been an issue for many, many years. Of course, you know, as well as everybody else, the building is under-elevated. It will still be under-elevated when the civil courts leaves. It'll still be a problem. And right now, the information I have today, the architects came up with this, is we need to add some elevators. That's kind of a no-brainer. It's going to be difficult to add elevators, put major vertical penetrations in the middle of the building while we have an operating courts building. So we plan, at least on April, to talk with you about closing down Lamar Street and making it, adding some elevators on the outside of the building to come up and serve staff, possibly, and serve maybe juries, possibly. So they're still drawing some things. So I don't have any sketches to give you today, but generally that's what they're looking at. They're kind of looking at also probably 6 courts per floor instead of 8.
And again, my question is going to be, are we keeping the same size courtroom, and do we have an equivalent number? If we've got the largest courtroom we've got over there, do we have enough of those right now take care of the judges that we have over there right now.
I would need to do a little addition on that, but they've also asked for larger areas of spectator seating for voir dires. They've had issues with that. So this is coming from at least the committee, subcommittee, regarding what's required for the next 20 years for criminal courts in Tarrant County. Now, I don't know if all the judges have been part of that. I'm sure they get the opportunity to speak up. They do to me every day. And so
Yeah, but they kind of feel like sometimes I think they don't want to speak up with some of their colleagues who might want a little bit more, as opposed to being a little, it might be nice to have a survey done of the judges that is anonymous.
Okay.
Judge, the answer to your question is it appears that they would like to have larger courtrooms than they have now.
Well, and but as I understand, voir dire occurs at the beginning, and then a lot of those jurors don't get picked and they go away. And so it would seem to me to be a little waste of space to create a larger courtroom so we can sit jurors in there until they're told to go home.
But also, there's a lot more components to that, Judge, than just the voir dires.
I always hear it mentioned in terms of voir dire.
Okay. Again, we'll have something in April, and between now and April, hopefully we can come up with some type of
anonymous survey.
Let me work on that. That's all I have this morning.
That'll be interesting.
Finally, members of the court, we have one additional item. That's item D. This is the update on the 1115 waiver delivery system. Corey Clark from Public Health is here to address the court at this time. Corey.
Commissioners, Judge Whitley. Today I'm here to give you a brief update on our 1115 waiver and how we've been progressing through the last 6 months since our briefing, and to basically discuss with you some of the items that we've been dealing with over the last few months within the health department. Real quick brief on the projects that we are currently working on. We had 8 initial projects approved, and we had a tobacco cessation project, an antenatal steroid, which was a project that is being implemented to decrease the amount of preterm birth in the county. We have the TB clinic expansion project, which is increasing access to some hours that aren't normal in normal practice of the TB clinic. Our chronic disease self-management program, this is intended to reach out to the community and to educate members of our community that have chronic diseases. Our TB medication, rifapentine, another TB project. This is utilizing a newer type of drug with a different delivery methodology for decreasing the TB burden within the community. Our PRIDE project, which we're all familiar with this as a project that is happening in other areas of the county. We are now moving that into the Arlington area, and it's used to target adolescent youth on healthy sexual behaviors and sexually transmitted diseases. The STD clinic expansion, this is similar to the TB expansion project, increasing that access to the community members. Our health information exchange project, which is the 8th of our approved projects, this is really a collaboration between the health department, and we're working with the Tarrant County Hospital District and other members of our community hospitals to create an information highway to be able to exchange health information at a real-time pace. And then our 9th project, the Matter of Balance project, this one we are pending approval. We hope to get the news on that in March. And this is to teach our Tarrant County residents age 60 and over fall management techniques to help them increase activity and mobility in the household. The timeline, as you can see, these all started back in October, actually a little bit before October of 2012. Really what I want to illustrate here is that there was a lot of time up front that was developed by the state and CMS to figure out what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, create plans, and then actually submit projects. Our first projects were submitted, if you see on the bottom left, in March of 2013. And the first 4 were approved in April, so a little over a month and a half later. If you follow along the red font there on the top, the second 4 were approved in September, and then we're pending that 9th one in March. Along the bottom, you can see in green, these are the actual payments that we have achieved. In May, we received a demonstration year 1 startup valuation payment, and this is just simply to get your projects online and get them moving. There's no milestones connected to that. And then the next 2 payments were received in November and January just recently, and we anticipate our next payment for July for our April reporting of $6.6 million. This slide here illustrates by reporting sequence the milestones and the valuations we've achieved. So as you can see in red, these are the valuations that we received to date and that we've submitted through August and October, and equate to approximately $3.6 million. You can see the total valuations for both DY2 and DY3 is $23 million, so $3.6 million out of the $23 million we've achieved through October. And you can also see that the CDSMP, or well, the ones written in red, or listed in red, those were 3 of the first 4 projects that were approved. So of course we were able to get a jump on completing milestones for those. The blue cylinder portion is what we anticipate reporting out in April. This will be another $6.6 million approximately. The white illustrates the October, and then of course the April there is the actual, the final portion, which is about $2.9 million.
So far, we're hitting all of our required milestones.
Yes, sir. To date, we have had 100% completion rate of all of our milestones that we submitted. And as the next slide will illustrate, this is a summary of those projects, broken down in demonstration years. So you can see, again, the startup was the 2.4. The red area was the 3.6 million. The 6.6 million is what we anticipate to submit in 2 months. We're tracking very nicely on completing those milestones. And then, of course, the white is a large payout. You can see it about $10.5 million. And then the April payment the following year. Now, this illustrates, if you see along the top there, demonstration years 1 through 3, total valuation of $25.4 million. Of note is that 4 of our projects were approved in April. 4 more were approved in September. So this put us significantly behind our demonstration year 2 pace. And if you see in the top left, as of the October valuation, the days that the October, or the date that the October valuations are submitted, we believe to be caught up to about 92% of that pace. So we've gone from significantly behind in April due to late approval by CMS, and then 4 more in September, to almost 100% back on pace by October. The next question is the $2.062 million that's illustrated in the gray. That is not a lost opportunity that can be carried forward into the next year, just as we are carrying forward some of our demonstration 2-year projects now.
Can you talk about some of the milestones of these projects? Like,
Sure.
Let's say tobacco cessation.
Absolutely.
What is the final milestone of that? How do we measure the success?
So all of the projects will be developed with processes in place to reach a certain outcome. So the processes may be develop a strategy and a plan. So basically an SOP of how you're going to do it. It's the model. It's how you're going to actually do it in the community.
Okay.
That's a milestone.
But what about the implementation and the actual achievement of the results?
Absolutely. So as we progress through the milestones, we might have another one which hiring and training individuals to implement it. And then, of course, the meat of the projects are the actual outreach into the communities and partnering with some different folks in our communities to start training and teaching those that are smokers within our communities. So That is targeted. There's multiple zip codes throughout the actual Tarrant County. Higher smoking populations were targeted based upon, obviously, the need there, with the ultimate outcome, which is your improvement targets, are to reduce smoking or tobacco use within the county. So we're not quite there yet, of course, because we've just implemented it, but we now have the projects in place. We're actually training. We're having classes. These are 8-week classes that are that go on, which those started back in October. So we're just now getting some of that data in, which I have a slide here in a moment that speaks a little bit about that. This right here, the financial timeline. The blue line illustrates the total valuation opportunity. The red line is what we've achieved. Obviously, the idea is to make the red line and the blue line come together. There will always be a delay because the opportunity is available, but then you actually have a stretch of time before you can implement and actually achieve it. You move on to your purple line as expenses. This is cumulative over the life of the project, so it doesn't represent a single year budget. The yellow line is an IGT, so this is the government obligation that we have, the payment, which is 42% of the total valuation. So as you can see, the cash balance, which is the green line, is always inversely correlated to that yellow line. And the IGT will always precede the valuation. It's always delayed by about 2 or 3 weeks. So we submit our milestones. CMS approves them. They come back and say, hey, you're approved for X number of dollars worth of your evaluation. So far, we've hit 100%. We then cut a check to them for 42%. 3 to 4 weeks later, we get the full payment in return. So you can see that the yellow line is always preceding the red line by about a week or 2 or so, and then you can see that it'll jump up.
Is the payment that we get inclusive of the return of the IGT?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Just a quick breakdown of our financials. Current cash income, our program income, $2.9 million at the end of January. And we anticipate in September approximately $4.5 million, based upon current budgets and IGT and milestones. Some of our next steps, and Commissioner Brooks still getting to that one slide. New project submission. We're pending approval right now for the matter of balance. Hopefully that'll come out in March. If it does, then that'll give us direction on how to start. Keep in mind that project, technically, the start date was October of this year. So we're already sort of working a little behind schedule on that one. Now, that's statewide. That's not a Tarrant County Public Health or even a regional issue. It's just they've been late rolling out those project approvals. DY 4 and 5 valuation adjustments. All projects have valuation metrics that they have to be reviewed and analyzed by CMS. And right now they're going through smoothing out the final adjustments for ours. We have full 100% evaluation approval for DYs 2 and 3, which would extend us out through fiscal year 14. But the fiscal year 15 and 16, they're still going through that valuation analysis right now. Our Category 3 improvement target approvals, this is relating to our outcomes. You're asking about outcomes. What did we actually do with the project? What was the actual the impact on the county? This menu of items, they are still finalizing right now. So as they finalize it, actually they've just released a final version of it, we will then submit our projects with our menu items for approval. That should happen within the next month or 2. That will also determine a chunk of money valuation piece that only represents about 20% of the total valuation. And then, of course, our milestone completions. Every 6 months, we'll report these out. That's going to be in October and April. That'll be followed by payments approximately, well, you can see here, several months after that, and then we'll follow that with a briefing as we've done. This is the second one. And then, of course, one of our next steps that we're looking at is also creating a strategic plan, or I should say, aligning the district projects and this funding possibility with our strategic plan. As we've gone through this, we recognize the opportunity to be able to engage our health department managerial staff and really get a good diversity in project selection that's not necessarily captured in the district funding pool. Right now we have 9 projects. Well, there's multiple projects within the health department that we would like to also to fund. So we obviously see that district is going to be a big portion of that mechanism. Managing ongoing expenses, sustaining the projects in case the funding source did go away, the IGT, risk management, and of course, what we're really talking about here is the selection of new projects. And again, keep in mind, this is external to the DSRIP actual funding pool. So the leadership and myself within the department are working on a policy so we can create an opportunity for these managers to basically submit a feasibility study, a business case of sorts of a project or an idea that they have that is directly aligned with our strategic plan. So that we're not sort of haphazardly just capturing projects, we're aligning them with each one of the pillars of our strategic plan. Once that's submitted, there will be a committee of leadership that will select the projects, vet the projects, and then we'll use a good project management methodology for implementing those projects, measuring them, and looking at outcomes. Of course, the dollars, how much can you put into this pool? That's going to be a direct reflection of milestone completion and program income that's supported by the district project. So that will definitely have to be determined by leadership annually. And lastly, I think I wouldn't be doing right if I wasn't able to talk to you specifically about our achievements and what we've actually done to date. So we have 7 fabulous project managers. These are the ones that are really driving these projects and really getting out to the community and developing these plans. Through those project managers, we had 32 new employees hired. So these are the ones that are out that are actually getting the stuff done and making the contact with our patients. Through them, we've had 4 new service programs and expansion of projects, 4 more projects. We talked about the revenue, the $6.1 million that we've brought in, but really the true measure, the litmus test, is how are we doing in our community and what are we doing to affect patients and educate patients. So far, we've done just that. 838 individuals as of the end of January have either been new participants in a tobacco cessation or a CDSMP program, or maybe these were residents that utilized our after-hours portion of our TB services or our TB clinics that would not have been able to utilize those during working hours. So bravo Zulu to all those project leaders and the project teams on a job well done.
What about the revenue expanded so far? I know we bring in $6 million plus, but what about the money that we have expended?
So expenses for FY 14, which is really, for the most part, when this started. Budgets for all projects are about $2.5 million. That would be to fully fund all 8 projects. That's correct. Approximately $2.4, $2.5 million. I get the exact number for you.
So what do we do with the net revenue? We use that for services?
Well, that's part of the piece that we talked about as far as this new selection process also. Obviously, we have to account for expenses. We have to look at risk. You know, is there going to be something unexpected that's going to happen within the health department that we might need to mitigate? The IGT is 42%, so we need cash flows to be able to support that. And then the new projects. Developing and submitting new projects for submission that otherwise would not be funded or maybe underfunded, but are in direct line with supporting our strategic outcomes and vision at the department. That's really where we're focusing that extra funding pool.
Well, it looks to me like you guys had a plan, you worked your plan, and it's paying off.
Excellent.
Yes, sir.
Indeed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very well, very organized.
Thank you. Thank you.
I believe we have an audience participation. Harriet Nicholson. Please come forward, and as you come forward, give your name, repeat your name and your address, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Harriet Nicholson. Again, that's Harriet Nicholson. I'm a constituent in the Tarrant County area. I'm a member of, I'm in
The mighty
Commissioner Wayne's-
Precinct 2.
Yeah, in Commissioner Wade's precinct. And I want to address the court regarding fraudulent liens that are being recorded in the Tarrant County property records. I visited the Tarrant County Clerk's office, and I picked up a brochure, and the brochure advised that, according to the FBI, property and mortgage fraud is the fastest-growing white-collar crime in the United States, thereby resulting in foreclosure fraud. The Tarrant County Clerk's Office has taken a proactive step in providing a free online automated service in which Tarrant County property owners can sign up to have their name monitored to track possible fraudulent activity on their property. My question is, in the event fraudulent activity is detected, what procedures or resources are in place to aid the property owner to remedy such wrong? And most times when these documents are recorded, it results in fraudulent foreclosure as well. Another question I had was, what measures are in place to ensure that lenders that are effecting non-judicial foreclosures are complying with the statutory laws since they are supervised by the judges of the courts?
Ms. Nicholson, I apologize, but because this item was not on our agenda today,
Okay.
we can't respond to you at this time. But if you'll see Mr. Manius, then he will get with you and see if the matter can be resolved.
Okay.
If it can't be at that level, then at that point, we'll put it back on our agenda, or we will put it on our agenda, and then you'll be allowed to come back, and we can then interact with you. But at this point in time, we're prohibited by law from being able to respond.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Manius is that gentleman right there.
Is there anything else, Mr. Manius?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
I would ask, I just found out that Ron Wright's sister passed away this past weekend, and so just would simply ask that you keep Ron in your prayers. At this time, we'll recess our open meeting and proceed to close to discuss items exempted under Sections 551.0.
We're live.
Having returned from our closed session and there being no business to transact at this time, we are adjourned.